Hi, and welcome to this video on Big Data and Analytics for the MSA Program 2019. My name is Koda, and later on in this video, we'll also be joined by Vicky. The Big Data and Analytics module will focus on transforming data into insightful information. We will be loading a large dataset to Azure Databricks, where we will clean, transform, and store the data we manipulate. With the use of Power BI, we will then import our transformed data to create useful visualizations. However, before we get started into the demo, we'll go through some simple concepts just to provide some greater context. So, ETL is a type of data integration that refers to three steps: extract, transform, and load. And this is used to blend data from multiple sources. During this process, data is extracted from a source system or systems, transformed into a format that can be analyzed, and then loaded into a data warehouse or other systems. Data at its core is just facts or figures, bits of information, but not information itself. When data is processed, interpreted, organized, structured, or presented so as to make them meaningful or useful, they are called information. Information provides context for data, and it's this context which allows decisions to be made. As you can see on the slide, the far left contains data from various sources, and by going through the process using various Azure services, we can combine and transform it into information. Now for this mini project that we'll be going through, we won't be going through all these services as it would then be a huge topic. So we'll be using Azure Databricks to do our ETL on our data, and we'll be using Power BI to display this as information. So what is Azure Databricks? It is an Apache Spark-based analytics platform. Its main use is to prep and train data, which can then be stored and used to make useful insights. It supports a wide range of languages such as Python, Scala, R, and SQL. I'll explain more of its features and usage as we go through the demo. For our demo, we will be importing a movie metadata dataset, which is currently a CSV file. We will then be doing the various transformations to it, and we will save our resulting tables back to our Databricks instance. I will show you how to then get the configuration to connect your Databricks instance to Power BI. Vicky will then be covering on how to use our transformed data to create useful, insightful visualizations using Power BI. So let's get on to the demo. Okay, so we've logged on to the Azure portal. Cool. And what we want to do is first we want to go ahead and create a Azure Databricks service. But before we actually go into that, first we should start thinking about what data set we may want to use. So what I've done is I've already gone onto Kaggle, it's a website, and the link to this will be on the documentation and our GitHub. So you can go ahead there and look for a data set. As I mentioned, I've already picked one, which is a movie metadata dataset. Also to note, Azure Databricks is actually quite expensive to run. However, we're lucky at the moment where there's a 14-day free trial. However, there's things called clusters which still cost. Now, with the Azure for Students subscription, you get $100 free credit, which will be more than enough. But to be sure that you don't go over this amount or spend too much, it's good to delete the resource after you're done using it. And I'll go through a bit more of this later down once we've completed this, but just to keep a note in your head for now. So let's go ahead and get started. So what we'll do is we'll first create our Azure Databricks instance. So we'll go ahead and on the dashboard you can see this create a resource. We'll go ahead and click that. Now you could also click this here, but for those of you who may not see this, we'll go over it this way. So create a resource. And in the search box, we'll just go ahead and type Azure Databricks. There you go, and we'll go ahead and click on that. Now, depending on your subscription, you may be able to see a create button, or you may need to see a sign up button. If you see sign up, just go ahead and click that and go through that. But for us, we'll go ahead and click create. Awesome. So now we'll have to fill in some basic information in order to create our Databrick service. So first, we'll go ahead and we'll enter in our workspace name. This can be anything of your choosing. So I'll go ahead and pick MSA Phase 1 2019. Cool. Your subscription should be automatically loaded, and we'll go ahead and create a resource group. So this is what I was meaning prior. So it's good to remember what you call your resource group. And essentially what a resource group is it's a name and it creates a container for all your services. So for us, we'll only have this one Databrick service in our resource group. But when it comes to cleaning up and deleting our service, we can just delete the resource group and then we'll delete all the resources within that group. Once again, you can call this whatever you like. So I'm going to go ahead and call this MSA Phase 1 2019 IG, just for resource group. For location, for me, it's automatically selected Australia East. This is because it's closer to where we are. If it hasn't selected this, then you can go ahead on the drop down and just go ahead and select that. For the pricing tier, we'll go ahead and select this. And as you can see, there's a trial, 14 days free. We'll go ahead and click on this. It is crucial you use the free trial, otherwise it will rack up a large bill. Some of them can work out to a couple $100. So click on the trial, and we can leave this as no. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and create this. And it's currently being deployed, and once it's been deployed, we'll get a notification up here. Cool, so as mentioned, once it's been successfully deployed, you'll get a notification up on here, and you can go ahead and go to the resource. Okay, cool. So here's our Databrick service created, so we'll go ahead and launch the workspace. I'm just going to go ahead and sign us in. Awesome, and it looks like it's being created successfully. Cool, so what we need to do now is we need to go ahead and create a cluster. So before we do that, I'll just give a quick rundown on this dashboard. So we've got our left menu bar down here, and this is where you go ahead and do a bunch of things like loading data, creating clusters, switching between notebooks if you need to. And over here, this is where you can sign out or go to your settings just with this little person icon. Okay, so as mentioned, first we need to go ahead and create a cluster. And so a cluster is essentially a networked computer in Azure. And this will essentially work to process your data and the commands you do in your notebook cells. And so in order to do things in Databricks, you first need to create a cluster. So on this main dashboard, we'll go ahead to the left menu and click on clusters. And now you'll note there's a button here called create cluster. So we'll go ahead and click on this. Okay, awesome. So for the cluster name, you can put whatever you like in there. So just put my name, go to this cluster. Cool, and then you can start doing some configurations on here. So we'll just keep it on the standard mode. So there's high concurrency and standard. So if you have many users using this workspace at the same time, it's good to go for high concurrency. But just as will just be yourself, and for this demo, just be myself, standard's perfectly fine. We don't need to change the runtime version or the Python version. What we do need to change is the auto scaling. So in order to keep costs down, what we're going to do is we won't have auto scaling set up. We'll just have a set instance. So click that off. And you can note here with the workers, we just go ahead and change that to 1. And I'll explain what workers and drivers are in just one moment. before we do that, there's another tick box here, which is the termination time. If we leave this to 120, we'll be left on for 120 minutes before it terminates. As we want to reduce cost, we'll just reduce this down to 30. Okay, and now into the workers and the driver. So the driver maintains state information for all the notebooks which are attached to the cluster, and the worker node essentially runs the executors and other services required for the proper functioning of the clusters. As you can see here, they do spin up virtual machines, and you can select which one you want, though each of these will have a different cost. So we'll go with the most low cost one, which is the standard one here. Once again, so we've got one worker, and for the driver, we'll just have it as the same as a worker. And that's all we need to configure at the moment, and you can kind of see your final configuration up here. Cool, so we'll go ahead and create the cluster. Now this will take a little bit of time. So as you can see, it's currently loading just over here. So we'll wait for this to load up. As you can see, now there is a green dot here, which means our cluster is up and running and we can move on to the next part. So the next part is going to go ahead and we're going to upload our raw data set onto our Databricks instance. So to do this, we need to go ahead to our left side menu, click on data. We'll just wait for our tables to load. We shouldn't have any tables at the moment. So what I'm going to do is just, no tables. So we'll go ahead and add data. So remember earlier, I mentioned that we need to go ahead and find a data set. And as mentioned earlier, I have one prepared. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and drag and drop this onto this part here. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll just wait for this to upload. Cool, so it's successfully uploaded. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a table using the UI view. So in order to do this, we need to go ahead and select a cluster. So we'll go ahead and select the one we just created. And we'll go ahead and preview the table. So it's just going to go ahead and load up the table. Okay, and now the contents has been loaded. So just go have a look. And we can note here, so with our CSV file, the first row is actually not data, but just the headings. So on here, you can go ahead and select first row as header. Awesome, so now it's populated the header, and we'll go ahead and create table. Awesome, and you can see a table is now being created, and this is just some of the data that's already there. Okay, cool. So now we need to go ahead and actually do some things with this data. So to do this, we need to go ahead and create a notebook. So once again, we'll go ahead to this left side menu, and we'll go ahead and click on Workspace, Users, so your user. So what you can do is you can go that. So you click on your user, and then you click on the chevron, Create Notebook. And we need to go ahead and give our notebook a name. So we'll go ahead and call that Movies. When you create a notebook, you can also choose the language. So for this demo, I'm going to go ahead and just keep Python on there, and it should automatically select our cluster, seeing as we only have one cluster at the moment. So we'll go ahead and create a notebook. So while it's being created, so a notebook contains cells. So these are cells here. And these can run code, they can render formatted text, and they can also display visualizations as well. For this demo, what we're just going to do is I'll just create, we'll just leave it as one cell. If you want multiple cells, you can just go ahead and click this button here to insert new cells. And while we're on this view, I'll just give you a quick rundown. So over here, this play button, this is where you can go ahead and run the cell. If you had multiple cells, you could either run the one above or below it as well. Up here, if you have multiple cells, you can also click this and run them all. Or if you have one cell, we'll just run the one cell. And another area to consider is this place here where it says attached. And so this is where it shows you which cluster is currently attached to this notebook. You can detach it, restart it, and do a whole bunch of other things. One thing to note, so as we have a 30-minute termination on here, say if you're on here and it's been over 30 minutes, you may see this saying detached. So once again, in order to run your commands, you just need to go ahead and click on this and then just reattach your cluster. Just something to note. So as the cells where you put your code in, this is where the bulk of your data manipulations will occur. So first, let's start off and we'll go ahead and read the raw data set that we just uploaded. And so in order to do manipulations, you also need to read the table. So we'll load the table with our raw data to a data frame, and then we can do operations on this data frame. So as I'm using Python, I'll first start out by adding some import statements into my cell. For this demo, I'm just going to import everything, but ideally when you do yours, just import the items that you need. So I'll just go ahead and paste this in here. So we've got our functions and we've got our types. And types are things just like the string type, integer type, and functions can be things like importing from JSON, when, and you'll see these as we go through this example. So let's go ahead and we'll read the movie table we just created and we'll save it into a data frame. Cool. So in order to do this, we do this here. So this is our data frame, and what we're doing is we're using a SQL statement and we're selecting everything from the table we just created. If you're not sure on this name here, you can just go to your data and it displays here. Cool. And what we can do is we can also display the contents of our data frame using a simple statement, which I'll just paste in here. So you got display and movies. Now note, all these commands that I'll be pasting in are on the documentation on our GitHub with explanations as well, so you can go ahead and read those through. So we're reading our movie table and we're displaying it. So we'll go ahead and run this. So just go ahead and click Run All. And so it's sending and running the commands to our cluster. And cool, this is what gets returned. So as you can see, it just returns the data and it returns the first 1,000 rows. Some things to note here. So you got the table view. If you want to create visualizations or bar charts, you can do using this. And you can also download the data frame that's being displayed here. So what you do for this, we're going to have to use it. So as part of your assessment, as you clean and manipulate and transform your data, once you are happy with it and what you're going to be using for your visualizations, what we do is what we want you to do is to download this, and then you're going to be submitting that as part of your submission. So you click on this button here and you download full results. We're not going to do that at the moment just because this is our raw data at the moment. We haven't done any transformations, so it would be a bit pointless, but just a note. Cool. So let's go ahead and do some transformations. And so for the assessment, we'd like you to use 3 or more types of transformations. And in this demo, we'll be covering 5. You may be wondering what transformations are. So I've added a link into our documentation on the GitHub, which goes through and explains the different types and examples of them. So go ahead and look through that if you're wondering what these may be. However, the transformations we'll be doing in this demo, we'll be doing some cleaning, some format revision, some filtering, splitting, and data validation. And so after we've done our transformations, what we want to end up with is 3 tables. So these 3 tables, this is purely just for our demo, and this is what we need to do our visualizations. When you do your assessment, you may only need 1 clean table, or you may have multiple tables. The choice is up to you and what you need to do your visualizations with. So let's go ahead and let's do some filtering first. So I'll just go ahead and paste this code up into here. And we don't need to display this when we run it again, so I'm just going to go ahead and comment that out. So you can use the hashtag or pound to comment lines of code out. So first what we're doing is we're referring back to our data frame and we're using the dot filter. And what we're doing is we're saying runtime. So if we have a look here, that's our column name. So there'll be a column called runtime on here. There we go. And what we want to do is we want to filter out any empty runtimes. We also want to remove and filter out any empty popularities as well. Now the reason why we chose these two columns is for our visualizations, we want to use these columns, which is why we're cleaning them or filtering them out. So I guess we can go ahead and run that. This time, because I've removed the display, it won't actually display any results. It will show the schema, but that's about it. And if there's errors, it will normally highlight in red. So as you can see, there's no red highlights, so we're good to go for the next part. So the next thing, we'll do some data validation transformations. So data validation can be slightly more complex. In this example, it is slightly complex, but this is just to give you an example and kind of help you out. So what we want to do for our validation is we want to validate that all numerical columns contain numerical values only. And for this column, say, could be any. And what we'll do is we'll create a user-defined function. And this means we can then call this function on different columns to then check if it's a numerical value or not. So first we need to create a UDF, a user-defined function. So go ahead and I'll paste this just on the top. So we've got a def and we're calling it as digit. It's taking in a value, and what it's doing, it's checking if the value is a digit. It returns true, else it returns false. And what we're doing is we're creating a UDF, it's taking in as digit, which is our def, and it returns a Boolean type. And we're storing it over here. And so now we need to go ahead and call it. So what we'll do is we'll just paste this in here. So, okay, so what we're doing is we're checking 3 more columns. So we've got the revenue column. And so what we're doing here is we're accessing our data frame. We're then with column revenue, we've got a when. So when it is a digit, what we want to do is we want to keep it. Us, we want to, yep, so when it's a digit, we want to keep it. And after it's done that, then we want to filter out and we want to remove any zero value columns, I mean any zero value rows within the revenue column. And we want to go ahead and do that for budget as well. And we're doing that with movie ID. So essentially we're removing any empty or any entries which are non-numerical in any of these 3 rows. And we're also removing any zero values as well. Awesome. So that's it. And the next type of transformation we're doing is we'll do format revision. And so here, what we are doing is we're converting the budget and revenue to New Zealand dollars. So I'll go ahead and just paste this in here as well. Cool. So yep, so we're changing from USD to NZD. And so what we're doing is so with the column, what we want to do is we want to create a new column called revenue underscore New Zealand dollars. And what we're doing is we're first casting our revenue column as a float. And we can do this successfully because what we've done prior is we've first made sure that they're all numerical values. And then what we're doing is we're timesing it by 1.46964. And you may be wondering what this value may be. And I guess at this time of recording, that was our current exchange rate. So we do that for both the revenue and budget. Awesome. And so for our last transformation, we're just going to do some cleaning. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and clean our date. So there's a column called release date, and we're going to go ahead and clean that and convert it to an actual date type to maintain consistency. So we'll go ahead and do that there. So here we go. So once again, we've got our data frame with column. We're checking our release date, and we're casting it to a date type. And as you note, for each of these operations, we are then saving it back to the same data frame. And so this is our updated values within this data frame here. So now if I go and copy this one here, just paste it down here for now, we'll go ahead and run this and we can kind of see what we've been doing. So once again, it sent the command to our cluster. It's just running the job. Okay, so I guess some of these we may not be able to see, like these ones, but where we've created new columns, we can go ahead and search for these in here. So if we go to the end, you can see here we've got revenue and our budget. So you can see those have been converted. So if we look at our revenue here, that was a US value, and this is a New Zealand value here. And our date types should all be in the same consistent value type. Yep. Awesome. So really what we've been doing is just some basic transformations. However, we still have a super large data set with a bunch of columns, and we don't actually need these. And we also kind of want to split this up. So another type of transformation is splitting. And so if we go ahead and look at this genres column, you can kind of note here, well, yep, so you can kind of note all of these ones. If you look closely, you can actually note that these are of JSON type. So these are actually JSON entries within here. And so what we want to do is we want to explode this JSON. So we want to pull it out for each of the movies, and we're going to go ahead and create a new table which links the movie to all its genres. So as you can see here, if I scroll up to the top, so what's our first movie? Toy Story. So you can see under its genres, it's got animation, comedy, and family. And so what we want to do is we want to create a new table which has 3 entries, all of 3 with ID 862, which is ID for Toy Story, and each of those will have a genre value, animation, comedy, and family. Cool, so this does sound a little bit complex, and it is a little bit more than these ones up here, but yeah, let's go through it, and you'll find it's not actually that bad. So I'll just go ahead and copy the commands, and then I'll talk through them. And I can remove this now here. Okay, so I've just pasted in this. So what we're doing is I've created a new data frame as we want to create a new table. Data frames and tables aren't the same thing, but you can use a data frame to create a table. Sorry, that's our data frame there. This is just a variable schema. So in order to explode the JSON, what we need to do is we need to define the schema. And so if we have a look here, we can see our ID is of a long type and that the names are strings. So what we're doing is we're creating an array type of struct type which has field, which is ID, which is this here. And we're saying that it's long. And we're saying we've got another field called name, which relates to this, and it's of type string. So that's our schema for the values within the JSON, within the genres column. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and explode these. So what we're doing is we're creating a genre data frame. We're then accessing our current movie data frame, which is all these ones up here. And what we're saying with column, we're creating a new column called genres exploded. And what we're doing is we want to explode from JSON. So this is from the JSON table genres, which is this. And we want to explode it, we want to do it from JSON with the schema, which we've defined up here. So it's saying with the column, with the schema, and we want to explode it. And what we'll do is we'll be creating a new table genres exploded. Then what we want to do is create a new column called genre name. And what we want to do is we want to populate this column with all the names. So what we'll be doing is we're creating a new column called genre name. And within this column, you'll be storing just the name. So animation, comedy, family. For this, we're ignoring the ID because we don't need to use it. After we've used our genre exploded, we can then go ahead and drop that column as we no longer need it. And then what we're doing is we're going ahead and selecting the ID. This ID is the ID of the movie. And we're also selecting the column genre name, which is not currently here, but we did just add it. And we're setting an alias of genres. And then what we're doing is we're selecting it and we're storing it into this data frame. And then lastly, what we're doing is we're displaying this new data frame. So if I go ahead and run that, so you go run all. Awesome. So now you see you've got your two data frames. And if you expand these, they just show the schema. And what we're doing is we've got so data frame. So this is the movie IDs. So remember our 862, which is Toy Story. And you can see it's got its three genres, so animation, comedy, and family. And this is our cleaned data frame. And so what we want to do is we want to store this, and I won't be covering storage just yet. This will be, I need to do some more transformations, and then we'll go on to storing these data frames as tables. But genres is done, so it's got our ID and genres. So remembering the assessment, we need you to save these as CSV to submit. So what we're going to do is we click on this one here, and we go ahead and download full results. And because it's over 1,000 rows, we need to re-execute. So we'll go ahead and do that. And it's down here. And so I'll probably rename this to movie type, and this will be part of my submission. Okay, on to the next one. So remember we wanted to create three tables. So the second table, what we want to do is we want to associate the movie ID with the production company that created it. So it's actually quite similar to the genre. So we don't currently have our movie data frame being displayed, but essentially with the production company, it is also a column which contains JSON. And so we're going to do something similar. We're going to define the schema. We're then going to explode and create a new column with the production companies. We're then going to go ahead and create another column with the production company names. We're going to drop our exploded column, which we no longer need. And then we're going to go ahead and select the movie ID and the production company names, and then store that to a separate data frame again. So let's go ahead and do that. Cool. And I can comment this one out for now. So once again, it's quite similar. So if you were to have a look at the production companies column, you'll note that it has an ID and a name once again. So for our schema, we've defined it as ID and name with long and string. And once again, we're doing something quite similar. So we're exploding it as mentioned, using the schema and the column which has the JSON. We're getting the name, saving it to production company name. We're then dumping our temporary column, and we're selecting a movie ID, and our production company name column, and we're setting an alias of production companies. And then once again, we're saving this into the company's data frame. So if I go ahead and run this, as I'm displaying companies, there we go. So you can see with 826, which is Toy Story, the production companies was Pixar Animation Studios. And you can also see for some movies, so whichever movie has ID 8844, you can see there was 3 production companies involved. Awesome. So this concludes our transformation portion. And once again, remember, as this is one of the tables which we will be using in our Power BI component to do our visualizations, we need to go ahead and save this one as well. So once again, we'll go ahead and download the full results. Cool, we're just going to rerun. So while that's happening, there's one last thing we need to do here, or one second to last thing we need to do here in the Databrick service. So as you've been seeing, we've been saving these transformations into the data frame. Now with Power BI or with any other external system that wants to go ahead and connect up to your Databrick service, they can't actually access these data frames. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and save these as tables. So as you can see at the moment, we've only got our single table here, which is our uncleaned metadata table, movies metadata table. And so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and save our genre to a table, our companies to a table, and the values which we've been, or the columns we've been cleaning within our movies, we want to go ahead and save that into a table as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So firstly, we'll go ahead and do the genres. So this is the code that we currently existingly have. So we're going to add in an extra line here. So just add that. I'll paste this in here. Oh, the wrong paste. Cool. So with this line that we've added, we can see we've got a dot right. We've got the mode as overwrite. So if we don't have this in here, what will happen is when it tries to create an extra table, the table will already exist and will throw an error. And so what we're doing is we're saving, we want to save it as a table, and we're giving it a name called movie type. Cool. So we can go ahead and run this. And so if we run this time, so as we saw earlier, there was only one table at the moment. So if I go ahead and run this, there should be a new table called movie type, which gets added. So if I go ahead and click on data now, you can see movie type has been added. Cool, so that's what we've done with genre. We want to also do the same with companies. So just go ahead and add that in there as well. So once again, we've got our right, we're saving it as movie company, and we've got the mode as override. There are different there are different mode types as well. So you can append. So rather than overriding the entire table, it will just append it. And there are a whole bunch of other configurations you can do as well. So if I run that again, it will go ahead and create a movie company table. Okay, and now there is one more table which we need to create. And we'll go ahead and do that now. So just go ahead and comment this one out for now. Now you remember we've been doing some transformations on this movie's data frame, but we haven't really done much with it. And so what we need to do is first, we're going to pick some columns that we want to do some visualizations on in Power BI. And so for this, we've selected ID, title, budget, and NZD. So this is our transformations that we've done. Popularity and runtime. So as you can see, all the columns I've selected were the ones that we've been doing our transformations on. And so this is something to keep in mind for when you do your assessment. Make sure that the transformations that you're doing on the columns, they're actually meaningful transformations and that you're using the columns. So what we're doing here is we're just displaying a portion of this data frame. So we're selecting these columns and we're going to display them. So I'll go ahead and run that. And as you can see, it's now displaying the selected column. So it's got ID, title, the budget in New Zealand dollars, the revenue in New Zealand dollars, the popularity, and the runtime. So this looks pretty good. Now remember, as we're going to go ahead and save this to a table, before we do that, we want to save this as a CSV as it's part of our assessment requirement. So we'll go ahead and download the full results. And while that's happening, we'll go ahead and add some code to save this as a table. So this piece to save it as a table is slightly different to the other ones. So I'll go ahead and paste that in there. So you can see we're accessing our data frame. We're going ahead and we're selecting the columns we want to save to the table, which are the same ones which we just displayed. And then what we're doing is similar command again. So we're just writing, saving the table as movies with the overwrite mode. So if I go ahead and run that now, cool, so it looks like it's run successfully. And so if we go into the data, you can now see we've got 4 tables. So we've got our movies, which we just did, movie type, which is the genre, and the movie ID, and the movie company, which is the company name and the movie ID. Now you may be wondering why we've been saving it using this. If you go to the data, you can't actually download your table, which is why we're saving it as a CSV when we display it from the data frame. Awesome, so that's the complete code for this Databricks part. Now there is one last thing we need to do, and what we want to do is we've got our tables stored in our default database. Now we just need to get some configuration in order for Power BI to then access these tables. Awesome, so you'll note on the top right, there's the account icon. So we'll go ahead and click on that and go user settings. So once it brings you here, you'll note we're already on the access tokens tab. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and create a new token. And you need to just give a purposeful name of what the token's for, just for your own reference. So I'll call this Power BI. And you can give this a lifetime. 90 days is fine. So we'll go ahead and click on generate. And this dialog pops up. Now it's key that you copy this right now because as you note here, you won't be able to see this dialog again. So once you click done, you won't be able to find any reference to this string. So it's good you save this now. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code and I'll just paste in our token in there. Cool. Now that we know we've got our token successfully, we'll go click done. So we've got our token. Now what we need to do is we now need to get our server details. And so in order to do that, we need to go back to our clusters and we'll go ahead and click on our cluster that we have created. And we'll go to the advanced options here and you'll note this tab here, JDBC. And you'll note there's a whole bunch of values here. And so in order to create, or not create, but to know our server endpoint, we need to refer to this column here. And so there are a few things we need to copy. So first, we need to copy this portion here. So that's our server hostname and our port. So we'll go ahead and copy that and we'll just go ahead and open Visual Studio Code again. And just in front, we want to add an HTTPS, which is our protocol. And now we need to refer to our SQL path. So in the same column here, you'll note from here SQL, and we just go ahead and copy all the way up to the semicolon, but not including the semicolon. So we'll copy that, go back to our Visual Studio code, and we'll just paste that there. And so that's our server endpoint. So just to kind of format this neatly, so when you go into Power BI, and Vicky will be covering this, you'll note that there'll be a place where it says password. So that's our password. There'll also need to be a username, and by default the username is just token, and for this will be server. Awesome. So it's advisable that you save this file, as you'll need to refer to it later on. Awesome. So in terms of doing your data transformations and I guess saving your data frames to a table and getting the necessary information to connect Power BI, it's all done. Now there is one last thing that we need to do. So after we've done this, we can go ahead and go back to our Azure portal. So as I mentioned earlier, using Databricks can become quite expensive. And with the Azure for Students, you only get $100 credit. So what I recommend doing is when you say stop working on your Databricks service or your project, I think what would be good is first go to your notebook. Go ahead and open that, and I'd advise just copy all the contents of your cell and say create a new text file and save it in there. This is so then what you can do is you can go back to Azure, and remember how I was mentioning the resource group. You can go ahead and delete the resource group, and this will delete your Databricks service. And so what this means is you can be sure that because your Databricks service has been deleted, you won't be charged any additional cost, even though it's the free $100 credit. Say if you've linked your credit card details to your Azure account, then say there is that risk that it could start charging it. As you've seen, it's not that hard to create a Databricks service and to create a cluster and just to upload your data. And yeah, so we'll go ahead and I'll just show you how to delete your Databricks service. Now avoid using this delete button, because what this does is it just deletes the service. What would be good is to delete the entire resource group so they could encapsulate other services within it. So in order to do this, what we'll do is first, you need to recall what resource group your Databricks service is in. So as you can see, resource group is here. This is what it's called, and you can go ahead and click on copy. And we'll go ahead and search that, and you can see the resource group is here. And now, so just to note and to reiterate, when you delete your resource group, it will delete the Databricks service. So make sure that you save your notebook cell, save all the text in there, because once it gets deleted, you won't be able to access it again. But if you have the script, you can then once again just recreate your Databricks service, run the script, and you'll be back to where you were. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and click on delete resource group. It'll tell you to type out the resource group again just to confirm that you want to delete it. So ours is MSA phase 1 2019 RG. And it tells you what's going to be deleted. So in our case, it is just the Databricks service. And we'll go ahead and click on delete. Now this does take some time. So once you know it's starting to delete, this is kind of your confirmation. And then you can go ahead and close your browser and sign out. Now say if your work was partially done, just a note, so you'll need to then do steps, so referring back to the documentation, steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8 when you need to connect to Power BI. And I guess that concludes this part 1 piece of the Azure Databricks side. I'll now pass you on to Vicky, who will explain the Power BI portion and to create visualizations using Power BI and the tables we created in our Databrick service.